If you were designing a workplace, would it look like the one you're in right now? Stop laughing. Okay, now that we've calmed down, what's your answer? How would you set up your teams? How would the workflow, ideally? What kinds of training, remember training, and learning opportunities would be provided? Put simply, what would the user experience look like? This is the question David Greene is answering every day. With a background in UX and a passion for making work not suck, he's perfectly suited for the job. He's led some great efforts while in the agency world, creating a time-off program for employees who need to care for elderly parents or grandparents, and a part-time pilot that gave people and the agency flexibility to do great work and live a great life. That's the goal. As David says, we should be thinking about how we integrate work with our lives, not how to build our lives around work. I couldn't agree more. And I think you will too, after listening to our conversation. Welcome to the DesuckifyWork podcast, the show where we cut through the BS and find ways to make work more fun, more human, and less ridiculous. All of which makes your business more profitable, by the way. If you enjoy this one, please like, share, rate, review, or subscribe to the podcast. Let the desuckifying begin. Here's David. Okay, David Greene, welcome to the DesuckifyWork podcast.
Thank you for having me, TJ. I'm really excited to be here today.
I'm excited to have you here. You've got an interesting background in the world of UX, but shifting that into the space of workforce design and innovation. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about what's going on with you in terms of your career right now, and what's lighting you up right now.
Workforce innovation is my passion. That's what I'm really into. Kind of to put it into context, maybe I'll give you a little history where I came from. That'll
sure.
Kind of how I got here.
Yeah, great.
Well, in the early 2000s, I started in creative and marketing. I had my own agency, grew it to about 8 people, $1 million a year in billing. And then the mortgage crisis happened. 60% of the operating revenue went away.
Yeah.
Which was a major pivot. So then instead of, bringing in projects that fed the beast of a full-time team, I brought in projects that would, I build teams for them. I did that for a number of years. And then a friend of mine pointed out to me, he's like, you do UX. And I went, really? He's like, yeah. I mean, it's all about structure, interaction, and experience design. And that's what you do. And I'm like,
yeah.
That led me to go into critical mass.
Yeah. And
at critical mass, I was hired as a contractor. I did that for a few years. Then I was brought on full time. Actually, I got promoted to director of UX. In that job, in that role, I did a lot of large scale digital ecosystem work for Fortune 100 companies. So just these big, complicated beasts that needed to be analyzed, streamlined, presented appropriately. It was really exciting. I loved doing that type of work.
Yeah.
But then my next pivot that got me here was a friend of mine, Linda. She was leaving critical mass, and she was the lead for the age affiliation on the DE&I board.
Okay.
And so I became the lead for the age affiliation group. And in that capacity, I looked around and I went, advertising's really young.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure of that one. So what ended up happening was I was like, all right, I've got a constituency now. How do I help make life better for the people I'm supposed to represent, So then I started coming up with programs. The first one I came up with was called Human-Centric. It gave people an extra 40 hours a year to take care of their aging and elderly parents.
Love that.
And it was very popular. A lot happened there. Then I moved on to doing an intergenerational mentorship program called Bridges.
Okay.
And then finally at the corporate level, they did this program called Difference Makers, which enabled employees at all levels to present ideas to upper C-level management at Omnicom. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I made it there. I loved that program. And most recently, there have been some changes in the industry, like Omnicom and IPG merged. There was a lot of restructuring going on. So that was where another pivot kind of came in, where it was a natural transition point for me to start moving more towards workforce innovation architecture and projects along those lines. Right now, I'm still doing UX consulting, but I've got some workforce innovation stuff that I'm working on that's really floating my boat, shall we say.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's interesting because I think for a lot of people, it's just the two words together, workforce innovation, might feel sort of strange to their ear because it's not a term. If you're outside of that world, you don't hear that a lot. I mean, I think your experience in many workforces may sort of prove why you don't hear that a lot, because it doesn't feel like there's a lot of innovation. Like, it feels like we're using the same workforce model that we started up 100 years ago, basically, from the industrial age.
Yeah, well, in the industrial age, we went from agrarian workers to working in, the Industrial Revolution, all the machine shops and things like that. Now we're moving into a much different location, and the structure of work and the hierarchy is very similar.
Yeah.
It's really consistent.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of tension against that right now, right? Between when we work, where we work, and then obviously the big question, how we work. And I would say, certainly in my own experience, I work as an executive coach primarily, and I just feel a lot of the frustration of the way we work just doesn't feel like it's quite right for the kind of work we're trying to do.
No, and the nature of work is changing, as well as the structures that we do it within.
Yeah.
Also, looking towards the future, I've seen studies that, did you know, in about 2035, they're expecting 50% of the workforce is not going to want full-time jobs.
Wow. That's amazing.
And when you look at that, you go, okay, how do organizations need to prepare for that? How do they structurally accommodate workers that are, limited time employees as opposed to full-time employees?
Yeah. I mean, that's really fascinating, especially because you mentioned some of the work you did in I don't know what the affiliate group but it was something like 50 plus, or,
It was the age affiliation group.
Age affiliation, right?
50 plus employees.
So trying to kind of work with folks who are maybe outside of the typical advertising age range. And I think about part-time related to that a little bit, right? Because I think for a lot of folks who crest over a certain age, and it could be different for every person, I'm not even saying this has to be exclusive to people based on their age, but I think there's a natural thing where some folks might be like, I don't know if I want to do the 40, which is really 50-hour-a-week thing, but I know I've got stuff to contribute, and I'd love to show up in a part-time way where my value can still be put into this organization. But every person I've talked to about this, it's like their brain breaks when they hear that. They go, well, we don't have structures in place to support that. And, how do we, just from basic things like pay and benefits, but even just well, when do you show up, and what are you responsible for? And what happens if you're not there because you're only supposed to be there from 9 to 1 every day? What happens if somebody needs you at 2? None of those systems are in place. So I'm curious if you've explored any of that, because if that's where the trend is going, people are going to have to figure it out sooner than later.
Right now, when you look at limited time employees, it's done ad hoc. It's just kind of like, oh, we'll let John do it, or Jessica, or whatever, rather than having a program for it. How do you handle this? How do you accommodate a workforce that doesn't want to be with you, honestly, 40 hours a week? And that was actually what the OmniFlex program was that I developed, Difference Makers program.
Yeah.
It was funny. We started with a lot of people, like 230, and it made it down to 9 people who presented to a panel of CEOs. No pressure. Just sit down. You get 15.
Yeah, seriously.
It went well, and it was well received. But in it, I examined that, going from how do you encompass having, if workers are not looking in the future to be 40 hours a week, if 30 hours a week, okay, what does that mean? What do you need to do? How does that affect the team? How does it affect the client? If you're in advertising, your client's going to be, why aren't they there right now? Well, they don't, so you have to set it up appropriately. And then when you look at 30 hours a week, there are many different ways of slicing it.
Mm-hmm.
You work a half a day.
Yeah.
What if you get 1 day off a week with one float day during the month, or you get 1 week off a month?
Right.
There are many different ways of doing it, and that's going to really be different by the teams that you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you work it if you have someone who's gone for a portion of the day
Mm-hmm.
and you still have the same deliverables? How do you make that happen? How do people work collectively? And how do you do things so like the people who are still working 40 hours a week are like not jealous and mad at you?
Yeah.
So it's part of it's like, if you're going to that, you want employees who sign up for 30 hours a week to work 30 hours a week. It's not 40 hours means 50 to 60 and 30 hour means 40 to 50.
Right.
If you don't work on Tuesday, no one calls you on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And you can't get mad at them or anything because that's their day off. The deal is. And then when you work into how does that work from a financial perspective, organizations pay 75% of your salary.
Right.
And then it's a question of you still get vacation time, benefits. There are discussions that go back and forth.
Yeah.
What is the floor for the minimum hours you need to work to get insurance? Is that insurance fully paid? These are all the questions that need to be examined.
Yeah.
As the workforce goes forward, it's going to be a part of it. And the question is, are we going to get ahead of the curve and put these policies in place right now?
Yeah.
And do it with intent and methodically rather than just crap.
Oh no. Yeah. What do we do? Yeah. I mean, this comes back to one of the reasons I think I mentioned to you previously, like I had shared a post that I think HR, for whatever you call it, the management of workforce, design is at least in part should be a creative and strategic endeavor. And when you're describing all of these challenges, right? What does it mean to have a part-time workforce? I think, ad agencies should be good at this because ad agencies solve complex problems for clients daily. You've done it in UX. I come from the creative side, so doing it in terms of like campaign development or brand development. But these are not simple things. Lots of variables, lots of factors, and we do it every day. And yet, when it comes to the internal operations of our agencies, I think we treat it like a clerical job, almost more so than another strategic and creative endeavor. So I'm curious for you, where you fall on that, and maybe also how has your UX experience influenced the way you're thinking about the workforce stuff?
Well, once you get trained in it, things are structures. You know what I mean? How does this beast work? What comes together? What's input? What's output? How do they relate to each other to get to a common destination? Yeah. So that's kind of where my UX background comes into play. But when you're looking at it from an agency perspective, I think one of the things there is pay to play. People are being paid by the hour. We've got an inventory of hours, and the powers that be are worried that they will have less hours to be selling. But there's also the new model that's coming up, which is value-based pricing, where it's like, look, we'll give you a baseline, but we take incrementally. There are a variety of different ways of looking at it, but it also for different industries. Imagine you're in an industry where people aren't billing for your specific hours. They are there.
Yeah.
Manufacturing, hospitality, things like that. You can do the same model. It just needs to adapt and reflect the environment it's in.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it just scares people is mostly what it is. Honestly, it's like, okay, we've got this model. It's been kind of on autopilot for 40 years after the sort of buying, the media commission-based model that advertising agencies used to use kind of went away. And so that's like, it's easy to keep riding it. The thing is, everybody hates it. Everybody looks at the hourly model and goes, this is stupid. We don't make the margins that we need to make. It's so much harder. We're getting squeezed. Our value is diminished. So nobody really likes it, but it's like the comfort of the known, even when the known sucks.
And So you're trying to desuckify that?
Yes, I would love to. And I love that you're trying to do this. I mean, this is like where the rubber sort of meets the road, right? Like, how do you desuckify work? Well, make the experience of working better. So, so how is that showing up for you in terms of the work you're trying to do now? I mean, who are you wanting to be working with? Who are you working with? Like, what are the services that you're putting forth to people to help them innovate their workforces and come up with something that's hopefully better?
Well, part of it is that workforce, how do we actively and responsibly structure a new work week? How does that happen? And there's some people I'm talking to about that, as well as the structure of it in terms of how things are organized. Moving towards the future, we're probably going to be moving more towards task-oriented than this hierarchical structure that we've got right now, whether we want to or not.
Yeah.
AI and things like that are it's changing the landscape, whether we want to admit it or not. And how do you do that in ways that would expand the capabilities, but not denigrate the workforce itself? I mean, a lot of the AI stuff out there, the implementations are not going well, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's because they don't encompass and the human aspect of it. How do you do that? I think part of that is just a fundamental thing. I mean, AI scares people, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I need to know everything before I can use this, or it's going to replace me. So they're scared of it.
Yeah.
I happen to think of it differently. Okay. I think it's a force magnifier. It makes TJ better at being TJ. It makes me better at being me.
Yeah.
And once you look at it slightly differently, it shouldn't be as scary. There will be accommodations coming up, but it was like, so I've worked on some of that, but included that 30/70 as part of it. So what if you start incorporating it, but people can adjust the amount that they work per week? I think that it's all going south is people are going, when they lay people off, you don't want to break it.
Yeah.
Doing that just breaks shit.
I know, but I think, if you come back to, you kind of mentioned there's this tension between trying to get value out of AI or anything and how it affects the workforce. And I think certainly the feeling is, and I would say it certainly shows up in reality in some places, is the way a lot of places and companies are implementing AI, there's not a lot of thought about the workforce and how it's affecting. It's more like there's this new candy that I can use and eat that gives me all of the things that the previous candy of people doing the work would do, but it doesn't have all of the calories, it doesn't have all of the cost, you know what I mean? And so there is just a dive into it, count on the promise of AI and lay off people as part of that process to show the benefit of AI, right? The benefit of AI is that it saves money. Well, how do I save money? I lay people off, right? So there's an equation going on there that is probably part of the reason why many of these AI experiments are not working, because they're not thinking holistically. They're thinking more just down to that bottom line. If you show up at a company and they're thinking AI is going to save me a whole ton of cash, what would maybe wake them up to a different possibility, or one that integrates thinking more the way you're talking about?
Well, I think you need to start with you need to have a structure for the implementation, Yeah. Look at which departments would it work best in? Who are the best people in these departments?
Yeah.
And then you talk to them people and you find out what are the tasks that you're doing. And you figure, and there are certain underlying tasks that everyone's got to do. Meetings, emails, there's granular tasks, but then there are the composite tasks like a quarterly report, things like that.
Yeah.
How do you bespoke it to a specific company and its employees without freaking them So it becomes like it's just a natural tool that I'm using. I'm not afraid it's going to replace me.
Yeah.
And I might get a little benefit because, I've got my little SD side project and I would like to work less, or I've got kids and I want to spend more time with them.
Yeah.
There's ways of weaving it into an existing environment that's both productive and beneficial. I mean, because at the end of the day, I mean, treating employees well and integrating things appropriately isn't just altruistic. It's a competitive advantage if you get to keep the best and the brightest.
Yeah. Yes. And then I see a bunch of people acting like they don't know that, right? I mean, that's the weird thing. It's like some of this is sort of breaking our brains a little bit right now. It's like, because I think of a couple of things. One, that seems like patently obvious to me on some level, right? Like, create a good workforce, you're going to attract good people, right? And even people who are the most sort of all in on AI being able to do a lot of things that people can do must know that at some point people are going to be involved. Like that just seems sort of obvious, right? And so, yeah, wouldn't you want the best? But I think what I feel like is missing is something a little higher up, which is like a vision for all of this, meaning we're bringing in AI and yeah, it's going to do tasks and it's going to save time and it's going to save money and it might do certain things better, blah, blah, blah. But like, to what end? Meaning if I'm an ad agency, what do I think I will be able to provide the world in 5 years if I integrate AI in a really healthy way? What is it? It's not just so much on the saving side, but what new things might I be able to unlock? What new value? And I feel like we're barely talking about like what's on the other side of the saving time and money.
I mean, were people talking about this 2 years ago? Not really.
Yeah.
Then last year it got really more. I don't think we could possibly know right now what it's going to be 5 years from now.
Yeah.
We do know that the pyramid structure is going to start decentralizing. It has to. Because if you look at the core of it, tasks are going to be handled better. And if that's happening, what happens to the structure then? If you know that you can start, how does that? And I mean, it's just interesting to think what people are going to be capable of 5 years from now. Yeah. I mean, there's sometimes I'm working on stuff and I'm like, I'd like to know about the demographics in this particular county, things like that, where in the past I'd have to talk to someone in marketing science or an analyst or something like that. Now I can type it in and go, here it is. Can you validate that for me? What are your you've got to do it appropriately. Man, we are starting from a place of going, we are transitioning right now. We just incorporate it, but just think we're here. 5 years from now, we're going to be starting here with these level of tools that are available. Right. What can you do with that? Yeah. It's phenomenally exciting to see.
I think it is. And I think the reason that the vision piece feels important to me is that even if you don't exactly know, if I show up to work and one person says, we've got these new tools, they think they're going to make us more efficient and they may unlock some things for us. That's like, okay. But if somebody says, here's what I'm imagining, and I'm imagining that, when we do this and certain tasks are handled by AI, what you're going to be able to do now is show up and think about the bigger picture. You're going to be able to show up and be more strategic. You're going to be able to show up and solve problems that you couldn't have solved even a year ago, right? And we're going to be able to do things for our clients that we don't even know. And just getting people excited for what's on the other side, even without it being clear, I think is a way of getting people to go, okay, now I sense one, that there's more of a why for me to get into it, but also I believe that the company sees value in the people, because you're saying, we're not simply doing this to shove some of your work aside. We're doing it because we want to open up for anyone who wants it, different possibilities for what work can look like. That would start to feel a little more,
But what's interesting about that is who are the people who are going to be best suited
Yeah.
to really leverage this are going to be the older employees because they've seen the business work. They understand what's broke about the old model.
Yeah.
And helped establish the new model. The younger people are coming in, older people look at it as augmenting their skills. Not everybody, but it will augment and make them better and more effective. Younger people, it's a different world for them. They're coming in to an environment. Let's say you've got a computer degree, you graduate this year with a computer degree and heavy student debt. And you're moving into this environment where everyone's saying we don't need to hire, the juniors, but who's going to be doing that work in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah.
They need to be, it needs to be constructed. And I'm sure people who are inherently literate in this world are going to be more effective with it as time goes on. And because there's no pathways in the snow right now,
Right. Yeah,
just looking for what's next. Where do we go? But once those become highways, once they become paved and proven ground, there's a whole generation of people who are just going to rock this in ways we never, ever imagined. But during this time frame, I think it's advantageous to really leverage the knowledge of the older workforce.
Yeah, there's a really interesting thing happening there, right? Because the older workers certainly have the wisdom and the knowledge of how business works and how the value of these tools might shape the kinds of work we can do. And then the younger folks might be really savvy at the technology. But to your point, they're not even necessarily getting the experience because a lot of companies are looking, and I've had people who are, fairly senior in organizations directly say, like, I don't need to hire juniors anymore because I'm giving that work to ChatGPT or whatever other AI tool. And like on one level, you're just like, okay, I get it. Like if it saves you money today to have a bunch of, headlines written by ChatGPT, like that's an understandable impulse. But if you think like a little bit longer term, like what in the world happens, right? Where do people get to develop that wisdom? So when the current folks who are in their 20s turn 35, 45, how are they going to get this experience? So I'm curious, as you think about this idea of workforce innovation and development, what are some things that will help organizations think about all of this and see a reason to think about this, right? Like to see the value in, you actually want to bring some juniors in, even if they're using some of these tools, because they're going to be the next round of people who are going to carry this forward. How do you get people to hear that?
Well, like I said, I come from a structural background. You look at the structure. How does this organization function? What do they have? How do you look at it and you go, there will unfortunately be some atrophy and some, tasks are going to be shifted. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality of life. It's the reality of the world that we live in.
Yeah.
But how do you want to retain people? How do you want to do it? That's why I started paying attention to hours work, time, and things like that. We had this transition during COVID where this type of behavior was not really done before COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, completely.
I'm kind of an old dog at it because I started doing this when I started with Critical Mass. Their office was in Calgary and I was in San Francisco. So I started I've been on Zoom calls for forever, but it just started getting more and more. And it's interesting also watching organizations pull back and wanting return to office. I think moving towards the future, it's going to be about how do people and organizations effectively work into people's lives are not just coming to an office to do something. It's been proven now. They don't actually need to be there for most situations.
Yeah.
How do you optimize that? Structurally, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And I think the industry is still looking at it from, like you had said, there's a path that we've had for decades. There's going to be some decentralization that's put into it by these new powers that people are getting with these new advanced tools.
Yeah.
Do we know what that structure is going to be? No. It will prove itself over time.
Yeah.
But we do know now we are going to have to deal with it. We are going to have to incorporate it into our organizations. And all I want to do is make sure that that's done responsibly, humanely, shows a benefit for the employees. Like,
Yeah.
for example, the Concentric program that put together, it was interesting because it was like when I became lead for the age affiliation group, I went into the Slack channel. I'm like, hi, so-and-so, I'm having, this is what what are you people interested in, you know?
Yeah.
And the first response that came back was from someone who said, we do all these wonderful programs for young employees, like parental leave, all these things. He's like, what about us? You know, I've got aging parents and it's taking up a bunch of my time. What do we do for that? And I was like, okay. And then I thought about it, and I was living that experience as well. I had my father had late third stage Parkinson's, and he lived in Boston and I lived in San Francisco. So I was like, what would a program be like that would help people? You know, there's this area of user experience called service design. How do you design services for people and things like that? So I started looking at it from that perspective and did a bunch of just kind of analyzing what was going on, you know? Yeah. And there were a few things that came together on that was, how do people actually care for aging parents? And what it came out to be is that it's proximity based. People who live close to their parents, I need 2 hours to bring them to physical therapy. I do this. Like me, I'd need all the time at once to go back east. Mm-hmm. So we set it up so people could take the hours either incrementally or in one block.
Yeah.
The other thing that really turned interesting, and this is coming from an agency background, was branding the program. Calling it Concentric, because when people would ask time to take care of their aging parents, you know, we had flex time and things like that. There was always this weird transaction between someone asking for the time and the project manager. Because often what we found were people were giving away like almost HIPAA level information.
Wow.
I got to go take my dad to so-and-so because of this and that. And then on the other side, the project managers were like, I don't need that information. So by saying it's Concentric, people can now just say, I'm taking Concentric time. I'll be out Thursday afternoon, but I'll be back. They go.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. There's something really simple about that, right? But it's a big shift.
Yeah. It just, that dynamic just shifted it. So it became more acceptable to take care of your aging parents without giving away personal information.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's something, you know, this is, you know, I haven't done a lot of work in the UX side, but what I hear in that is like a deep understanding of humanity. Right, of what it means to be a person, right? Because on both sides, there's awkwardness that you're uncovering, right? It's awkward that I feel like I have to say, like, you know, my dad is dealing with this thing, and I get really granular because I feel like I almost have to justify the fact that I'm taking time. And then, a project manager, they're not really trained to hear that and know what to do with that. And now they're sitting there going, okay, I now know something about that person's father that in any sort of rational, sane world, I would not know unless I was friends with them, right? And so a very simple branding device just immediately creates language that acknowledges that bit of our humanity. And I think that's really neat. I mean, is that, you know, in the UX world, and now that you're expanding it into this workforce innovation, I mean, is that sort of at the core of a lot of this, is like, how do I create things in a way that acknowledge how human beings actually are? Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you're liking what you hear and like the idea of making work not suck, I invite you to schedule a free half-hour discovery session. What role is work playing in your life right now? Let's talk about it. All right, back to the show.
That's part of it. You need to look at how people use things. How do they communicate? And like in that case, coming up with Concentric, that's a term that people are better about. I was showing you a little bit of that in the thinking behind when I was talking about AI being a force multiplier. It's just, that's a different way of phrasing it.
Yeah.
How do we do this to make it, less scary, something that makes it feel like you're doing your job better and easier?
Yeah.
Because I really believe that's where it is.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things that we did for Concentric was we actually had it incorporated into the timekeeping system.
Okay.
So people on their timesheets using software could do it. So it gave us real accurate numbers on how people are using it. And it was fascinating to look into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think what I'm appreciating about what you've done and what you do is that you're operationalizing stuff that a lot of people wish for, and maybe even some people try to implement. But if you don't get into the details of it, meaning if you don't create it the right way, any of these experiences, they become just a bullet point on the careers page, like, hey,
Yeah.
we've got things that help you take time off when your parents are aging or sick. And it's like, yeah, well, how does that work? Oh, well, you've got to have an awkward conversation with your project manager, and then you've got to like make your case or whatever. And so I think there's something really useful here for anyone. This isn't even just ad agencies. This is everybody, right? When you're thinking about how to support your team, the details matter a lot.
One thing that was really fascinating about Concentric, about 10% of our organization uses it every year. And, I was 1,200, they're up to 1,800 people now. So, about 180 people a year use this thing. What I didn't expect were younger people using it to take care of their grandparents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Never occurred to me.
Yeah.
But it helps people build their families. And it's just, and I don't know, it's just something I found incredibly powerful about being a part of that was inspired me to want to do more. I love user experience. I love structures. I love foundations and things like that. Honestly, I just love helping people more. It feels good.
Yeah. And like that's coming through, first of all. But I think, what you just described with the helping the grandparents and helping families connect more. I mean, in some ways, this is like the question of our time, which is, how can we as people create better lives for ourselves, and how can work sort of play a role in that, right? I think we often have just lived in this mindset, which I think comes back to that old industrial mindset, which is work is a thing you do from 9 to 5, and it's just work. And then you build your life around it. And the reality of modern life is it doesn't really look like that, right? I mean, people, there is an integration of life and work happening. And there's a lot of work to be done to figure out how do we do that in a way that allows for the flexibility and the development of these relationships with our family and others, and is also not exploitative to the extent, because sometimes integration turns into, well, you work when you wake up and you work when you go to bed. So how do you navigate some of that stuff?
It's funny. You just said something that inspired me, and that's the way people normally look at it right now is, how do I plan my life around work?
Yeah.
It just made me go, why? Why do we have to plan around work? Why can't it, it be more flexible? And that's what I was trying to do with that OmniFlex.
Yeah.
But also, that's just a fascinating fundamental shift.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I really believe, like I said before, that coming up with programs and a work structure that respects and empowers your employees is a competitive advantage, you know? And if you're going to start from there, why not examine how people integrate it into their lives, not their lives integrated into their work?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a really big question for folks, and I think people are wrestling with it. I think right now it feels like the work is kind of owning my life side of the equation is being felt by a lot of people. I mean, I coach so many people who They appreciate that they have some flexibility in their work, and that has definitely shown up more, which is great. But there is a compulsion almost built into that that says, if I take a little bit of time for myself somewhere in the middle of the day, that I owe the rest of my day. Like people, it's like, oh, I take a little, time during the day to hang out with my kids. And then, I take a little time at like 6 to have dinner, which first of all, like that's not really encroaching on work time if you really want to be honest about it. Yeah. And then I put the kids down at 7 and then I work until midnight. And I'm like, well, I get it. Like I get where that sort of impulse comes from, but I don't think it's very healthy. It's one thing to be like, yeah, I do a little, like an hour at night because that's just like, I make up the hour or something. But
yeah.
But it creates this interesting tension for people. So I appreciate what you're talking about because I start to envision companies could have some structure and culture built around this. You can you can create expectations and boundaries within this.
That's where I think we're going to be going as you get to, I mean, when I saw that study, it said 50% of people are going to don't want full-time work. They want, is it gig labor? Are they running? What are they doing? How are they doing it? So it's going to be a more liquid and expansive environment than it is right now. But what are the other things that people want to do that you're basically in that situation? What the jobs are is a foundational element that will give them their health care, that will give them the base level. I've got a base level of income. Now, what do I want to do on top of that?
Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting because, I think that the calculations for businesses are going to need to become broader and more advanced. Yeah. I mean, the Concentric program was acknowledged as doing things to, both as from an employee attraction and retention, but the retention as well. The thing is, I mean, you've seen studies out there. I mean, when I saw one that said a baseline was like $40,000 to replace someone. I've seen other ones that do it on percentages of this person's salary.
Yeah.
But you got recruitment, you got training, you got onboarding, you got uptime while it's happening. With an agency, you've got to deal with the client transition and all that. It's an expensive thing to do.
Yeah.
So, because also if you look at it, younger employees stay at agencies 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Plus 50 crowd, 5 to 7.
Yeah.
They stay longer.
Yeah.
So you can add that into the calculations of what these all are. So I think at the end of the day, being nice to your employees and helping empower them to live their best life is a business decision that will help you.
Yeah.
Help organizations.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fully on board with that. And I think what I wonder, and I don't know if you've tried to do this in any significant way, is how do you make that real for people? Because I think people might get it on a theoretical level. Like, oh, okay, I hear you. Yeah, replacing an employee costs some money. I think some people will say, well, not me. I can replace somebody much quicker. Like, I think some people believe like they're not the norm in that case. But I think like the more you can quantify some of this stuff, the more likely people might be like, oh, okay, it will save me X.
You need to come up with a formula. That's what some of the things we're working on is. What are the formulas for that? But also, it's not going to work for every organization.
Yeah.
There are some organizations where structurally they're not going to want it, or management is just like, I have no appetite for that at all.
Yeah.
You're talking crazy.
Yeah. That's okay. Yeah.
I mean, pineapples aren't for everybody, know,
whatever. Even though they're delicious, but
I agree with you.
Yes.
But I'm just saying there's no one size fits all. But what there are components that can be intelligently applied to empower organizations to work better, be more profitable, and let their employees lead better lives. And that's what I find fascinating, and that's where I want to play.
Yeah, and I think what I see as possible with what you're doing, and this is where my brain goes, like I would just invite organizations to start running some experiments. Like, do these things on a small scale, trial them with a division or a team if you're a larger organization, or try one small change, right? And just see what happens, right? Because I think a lot of folks, if you're just presented with, you need to treat your people better to therefore do, improve whatever, that feels like a big undertaking. But it's like, what if you did a concentric like program? What if you took one division and tried dealing with the way they have their time off done differently? Just little experiments feels like, because it's so obvious we need to move through this and figure out a new set of norms around what work looks like. But there's so much resistance in the system right now that it feels like everybody's like clinging to old ways,
You also have to remember, we also are in a very heavily regulated environment. There are things you can do and things you can't do.
Yeah.
Like with the OmniFlex program, which was 30 hours, 75% pay.
Yeah.
From the presentation I gave, the COO of Omnicom and a couple of other CEOs became sponsors, and we were looking for ways to do, okay, what is a responsible pilot for this? And looking at it, it was like, well, the plus 50 category, Problem there is I talked to the lawyers, and the lawyers were like, let me give you an example. Guy's 34 years old. His parents just passed away and left him an inheritance. He no longer has to work full time, but he wants the job, but he can't apply for that program because he's too young. He will sue us.
Discrimination. Yeah.
Reverse age discrimination.
Yeah.
And I was just like, first of all, I was amazed how quickly the guy came up with that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm sure that's what they're paid for, right? To be like able to grab that little nugget and go, nope. Yeah.
But what was really interesting was, do you know who Rashad Tabakawala is?
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
I was fortunate enough, because of that program, I met with Rashad, and
cool.
he gave me some feedback that was really interesting and helpful. And what that was you should open it up to everyone. It shouldn't just be a 50 plus thing.
Yeah.
What that did was it opened a number of different avenues. The first one is, if we're to get a decent cohort, you can't do it at one agency because the population is so small for the older employees.
Yeah.
You have to get 5 or 6 different agencies to hopefully get 20 people. But if you open it up, it becomes easier. And then the way you do it too is you have them apply for it. What is it about your job? How can you, and you don't just randomly, everyone can do it. You have, for example, the main account coordinator for Nissan can't be part-time.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are certain jobs that just don't work with this type of equipment too.
Yeah.
So you have them do that. You also do a variety of, it becomes more of a group decision then. Which managers have it? How do you work on this? How do we implement it in your department? And you can do it within one organization instead of 7.
Yeah.
So it becomes much more functional.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I put in there too that I thought would be really interesting is the people who are applying for it, to ask them, how can AI help you do your job better? Ask them, you do this job.
Right.
What are you doing? Because you're going to be working 10 hours a week, a month, 10 hours a week less.
Right.
There's going to be some stuff that people are going to have to do. How do you make it easier for that adoption to happen? But then it was moving forward. But then, with the whole merger and the changing of everything, programs that were innovating workforces were not going to happen in that, environment. It's just, those don't happen when you have organizations of those size just trying to restructure baseline.
I know. And that's, it's interesting because part of me wonders, like, well, what if they did? Meaning, what if as part of a reorg, you actually thought about, like, how are you going to approach your workforce and maybe there's room for innovation there that can both maybe save money, but also improve the experience for people and hopefully improve the output for your clients. Like, as I hear what you're talking about, and you've mentioned a few times that it's a smart business decision. So if it is, well, then if I'm undergoing a big reorg, part of my conversation maybe could be, how am I thinking about my workforce, and how can I have these conversations at the beginning of these integrations rather than, all right, all I'm thinking about now is what are redundancies that I can eliminate, which is all people are feeling right now. I know everybody, half the people I know are somewhere affected by this, right? Because those are giant holding companies. And all they're feeling is the weight of the people around them just sort of disappearing and getting let go and all that. And there's no story around how is this going to make life better for those of us that are going to continue, and even maybe as part of the conversations before you get to the layoff conversation, like, is there anything we can innovate around the workforce using part-time, whatever, that maybe eliminates the need to lay off some people because we can sort of bring people into more part-time or contract or this or that. I mean, it feels like it could be more integral than I feel like it is.
I think it could be as well. But I mean, the fact when you're dealing with agents, holding companies of those sizes that have promised a savings of $750 million to Wall Street,
holders,
there's no room for experimentation at that level.
I know.
That's not on the table.
Yeah.
And I don't blame it. That's the way it works. But if you're going to be restructuring a company that's not part of some mammoth, expansive companies, you're going to be doing your company. What departments can you do it? How can you do this? How can you do this thoughtfully, intelligently?
Yeah.
Transition yourself so as the workforce changes, you have systems in place that you're prepared for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes a ton of sense to me. I would love a world where Wall Street puts a little wider lens on their view of what, a merger or an acquisition or whatever could be. I mean, I think there are some impacts of sometimes the very narrow lens that Wall Street uses that are not healthy for all of the things that you're trying to do. Bigger question than either one of us can probably solve today, but just it does frustrate me sometimes that there's just this myopic focus on scraping cost as opposed to like when I hear the word efficiency right now, it's a buzzword for scraping cost. What you're talking about is like real efficiency, which is give people better tools and better opportunities to work better, and they actually work better.
They will be happier. They will be more efficient. And that's where also, if you do things like let people integrate work into their lives as opposed to integrating their lives into work, they will be more loyal and they will stay longer.
100%.
Because they're going to be like, I can't find anyone else that's going to let me live this life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big deal.
God bless you. Do it.
No, it seems like, I'll just say this. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. I think more people need to be sort of playing in this space because I think it's an important thing. And I'm curious, we're talking about a lot of different stuff in this space. Is there anything we haven't touched on or any conversation around the workforce that we're not really having right now that you think we should be having?
Well, I think these workforce innovation concepts are happening in pockets, like we're talking about it here. But as far as broader implementation of it, it's still not on the radar in ways that seem meaningful to me. I think one of the reasons why a lot of these AI implementations are not failing is because they come up with the decision and what they want to do before they've actually looked at the system and say, what would work here?
Yeah.
And what's going to make it better, what's not going to break it. AI is a magnifier too. It's what's working will get better, but what's not working will also be better. So
that's a great point.
Be careful and deliberate in your implementations. Otherwise, you're not asking for success. You're praying for.
That's what it feels like, right? It feels a little bit like, this right now. Like we're just like, we're really just kind of blindly hoping. And, the irony of it all is like, if we just invited a few more people, who are your smartest, most strategic, thoughtful people into these processes, all of the workforce stuff, all of the AI development, and said, like, let's just think about this for a little bit. You'll save so much headache and aggravation and money on the back end because you'll be more thoughtful about it.
Because I've heard of different organizations that implemented AI, laid off a bunch of people and are like, oh, we got to bring them back on now.
Yeah.
There's some of them back on. And that's like, what?
Oops. Yeah.
Yeah. But like I said before, we are in a very transitional period.
Yeah,
both
I get
in
that.
the way people want to work, the way organizations want to function with this new disruptive technology thrown into the mix.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, to be fair, a lot of companies are just struggling to figure out, how in the world do I make money? How do I make enough profit? Whether if I'm a public company, obviously there's the Wall Street influence, but even as private companies, it's like, I don't quite know how I make a sustainable profit to keep this business alive, because so many things are upended right now that it's like my reliable structures are breaking down, and that creates fear, and it's hard to make good decisions when you're in fear.
I think it needs to be integrated more with HR as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it was interesting. I had talked to a friend of mine, Kevin, who years ago had done a program on AI, and it was before generative AI. It was, and he was working with some large hospitality organization, and they were having trouble hiring people, and they were trying to figure things out. But the system that they worked out actually did things to say, okay, this person, we want them to work this shift. Where do they live? How far away do they live? And it would give them, say, you can take this bus to this, and give them. So the prospective employee would look at it and go, that's how I get there. That's how I come back. And that makes sense for them. They would make things more accessible to their workers ahead of time, which helped their hiring process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes complete sense to me. And I think that sounds like there was some thought put into to how they implemented that. I know I've been throwing a fair amount of questions at you. I'm curious if you would have a question you'd want to share with our audience.
Yeah, I do actually. I mean, just thinking about it, I'm curious, if someone looked at their organization today, where is the experience being underutilized? Where do you look at it and say they're not being used to their best ability?
Mm.
And if your 5 most experienced people leave tomorrow, what would actually break?
Wow.
And then if you've identified those, how are you going to help retain that within your organization? What are you going to do?
Yeah. That's really interesting. I love that sort of line of thinking. And I think companies are wrestling with this, but I just don't think they know what to do. I think, honestly, it's a hard question, to be fair.
Yeah.
I think, again, ignoring it is not the answer, but I think a lot of folks go, it's a hard question. I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to pretend like it doesn't exist. I don't think that's the path forward.
Yeah, no, we're in a time where they're like, AI will take care of things and the economy sucks, so there are more people in the workforce that are out of work that we can get.
Yeah.
So it's just this thing of, we don't need to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
You do need to pay attention.
Yeah, you do. I mean, even if another great person exists, you still got to, first of all, attract them to your company. And will they be attracted to a company that maybe is losing people rapidly? And then, okay, now they show up after a few months of searching and they don't know anything that person who left knows. They're smart. They'll get there. But now you have at least a few months where you're getting substandard productivity, and you may never get some of that institutional wisdom back, or at least not for a long time, right? Because that stuff takes like being in the crevices of an organization for a long time to really know those things.
So it's this interesting balance between retaining who you have and attracting new people. And that is a balance of things along the lines of designing programs to optimize the retention, as well as having an understanding, a sensitivity, and a motivation to make work more accessible to people who are considering your organization.
Yeah.
And I think that's both executive and HR level.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. So if you could wake up tomorrow and you have a magic wand that you could wave and you could just make the world of work fully desuckified, what does it look like?
I go back to the idea of limited time, not full-time employees, and making work, not planning your lives around work, planning work around your lives is going to be meaningful. And that's what, honestly, the next generation of workers want. And they're going, I don't want to be at a place. I'm not going to be at a place. I'm not going to IBM and stay there for 30 years.
Right.
I'm going to do things with my life. I mean, it's like I've heard of people who are taking, what was it calling it? It was fractional retirement.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're 35 years old. I'm taking a year off, and because I want to retire when I'm young, have the time now rather than when I'm older. I mean, interesting. What's the balance going to be? What's the talk? How is it going to impact your career? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
There's a movement in a way that is different than work people have approached work in the past. How do you magnify the benefit of your organization by providing benefits to people's lives?
Yeah. There's just this, what I hear in that a little bit, I love what you're saying, is just how do we sort of create experiences at work that sort of maximize things for everyone? Meaning, how do I maximize what I want to bring to an organization, and how can I do that in a way that doesn't kill me and doesn't, and how can organizations sort of maximize the knowledge that's out there and the wisdom that's out there within the organization, but do it in ways that are creative and different than maybe trying to fit everyone into that same box that we've been doing. I think it's clearly like where things are trying to go. I'm hopeful we can get to a place where both sides feel good, meaning you can see the benefit of like, okay, maybe I don't have everybody sitting here from 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 9 to 7 every day, but I've got a little more access to different kinds of people when I need them. And then as a worker, it's like, yeah, I can build different kinds of experiences more fluidly over the course of time than if I was just stuck in one place and didn't have time to do anything else. So I think there's something really interesting about where this can go. And I will say this, you talked about generational stuff. I'm Gen X. I think maybe you are as well. Like, the one thing I hear from Gen X sometimes that frustrates me is like, well, I had to do it this way. I'm like, well, damn it, sorry. Like
someone who came before you had to do it differently too.
Like, yeah, exactly. You think the greatest generation or whoever was our bosses when we were coming in didn't have a whole set of experiences. Like, I'm like, what's actually going to work? And actually, like, what's going to work for your business? Like, if you're running a business now and you're Gen X and you're like, well, I had to do it that way. I think you're deliberately putting blinders on the possibilities for your business.
Limiting your options. You're defining who you are by a position like that. And it's not going to appeal to a different audience because the audience is different. Yeah. That's what we need to do, is we need to expand what we're doing. I guess I look at it using my background, in UX and creative. I mean, it's like a UX audit of the work experience. What is the user experience here? Mm-hmm. And all of the inputs and outputs of that. How do we look at that to effectively transform our agency so it's ready for the future?
Yeah, I love that framing. I loved how you even talked about an audience. Like, this is your audience. That's language that marketers are going to hear and feel. Like, I think about my audience all the time. Well, the people that come in that you're trying to hire, that's your audience. What do they want? And how can you provide it to them in a way that ultimately gives you what you want as well? Like, this is all doable.
Yeah, I mean, things like, how do you attract them to come to you? And then if you look at younger generations leave advertising within 2 to 3 years, how do you keep them a little bit longer so you're not going to have to pay for the next? But I guess sometimes I hear the thinking of like, they're interchangeable because it's an entry level position and we don't pay that much for it. And I think that's completely limiting thinking.
I think you're shorting yourself in that case, right? You are limiting what you're going to get from that person if you view them that way. Right. Yeah. So I know we've been getting into some heavy stuff. I want to have a little lightness here as we close out the episode. If you've listened to my show, you'll hear some sounds and sound effects at the beginning and end of the episode. For me, it's lots of meows and cat sounds and stuff, but I invite every guest to contribute their own sound. Do you have something you want to share?
Actually, I have two, and I'll let you choose between the two of them. Okay? Because I'm a musician. I make noise. Okay. So here's one. Kind of a tinny sounding power chord, because I know we're paying tribute to the Eddie Van Halen strap.
I love it. Yeah.
Or I just grabbed this keyboard patch. I kind of like it. It loops really nicely.
Very 80s, kind of new wave, oh man, I don't think I'm going to choose. I think both of those are going to find their way into the episode, because they both immediately make me feel something. The first one is definitely more like me as a teenager playing guitar, playing hard rock and all that. And the other one is just sort of the soundtrack to my high school years. I think about what's his name, who did Breakfast Club and 16 Candles and all those movies.
John
Hughes. That keyboard would be right at home in a scene. The kids are walking down the hallway in the Breakfast Club, and it's do 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 do. It totally would work.
It loops really. I made sure that was a good loop.
Awesome, very cool. So the last thing I always ask, David, is just where can people learn about more of what you're doing? How they track you down online?
Well, right now the best way is through my current website, which is It's greenonline.com. I was fortunate enough to recently acquire another URL, which is evolve.work.
Okay.
So you can reach me at David at evolve.work. I still haven't built that site yet, but I'm doing that.
Oh, I love that.
And if you want to find out more about the Concentric program, the Center for Aging and Work at Boston College did a case study on it, which is hosted at the AARP Employee Resource Center, and I'll send you a link that you can put.
Yeah, I'll drop that in the notes. That's really cool. My parents went to Boston College, so that's a fun little shout out there. By the way, really cool. Can people find you on LinkedIn as well?
I'm on LinkedIn as well. Yes.
Okay.
I'd love to talk to people who are just interested in this, and in organizations that are thinking about how do we approach this transition that's happening right now. What are the best ways that because I don't think there are one size fits all solutions. There's some bespoke that needs to happen. And I love engaging in that.
Yeah. Well, I invite everybody to reach out to you, because I think what you're doing is incredibly important. I love the framing of it. Your UX lens on it, I think, is really appropriate. I think thinking about workers as users, as customers, as audience, as any of these things, just immediately shifts the perspective that you have when you're thinking about building your team. So David, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this, and let's figure out ways to get people to do more of it.
Thank you, TJ. Really appreciate your inviting me.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into the DesuckifyWork podcast. And a huge thanks to David for bringing a fresh take on making work not suck to the show. You can follow David on LinkedIn and check out his site at greenonline.com, or reach out to him at david@evolve.work. A new site at that same URL is coming soon. If you enjoyed the conversation and would like to find some calm in the chaos of work, I invite you to schedule a free half-hour discovery session. Type meow in the calendar invite, and I'll also send you a free Desuckify Work t-shirt. Bye, everyone.